To the left-hand side for Vieira, who'll play it through to Gabriel Jesus, who's in here for Arsenal. Gabriel Jesus to finish it off. Oh, what a way to do it! Gabriel Jesus seals the points for Arsenal. He's back, and he's back with a bang.
Into the penalty area it goes. Gabriel's header, and it's into the back of the net. Arsenal take an early lead through Gabriel.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the daily Arsenal podcast with me, Harry Symeou.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner with me, your host, Harry Symeou. And on this episode, we're going to change directions a little bit. We're going to park the Arsenal talk for the moment, although there will always be a hint of Arsenal bias in every bit of content that we do. That's just the way it goes, right? It is an Arsenal podcast after all. If you can't get away with it here, where could you get away with it? We are going, though, to turn our attentions to this summer's European Championships that, of course, kick off in just over 24 hours' time. Scotland take on Germany in the opening game. That's a really, really interesting opening game. I think I'm really looking forward to it. And I just can't wait to sit and watch a load of football again, to be honest with you. I've had my break now. I'm fine. Let's get back into the thick of it. Throughout the competition, as I said, we're going to keep you across the latest Arsenal news, but we're also going to be focusing on what's happening in the summer's championships, looking at events, players, managers, all the rest of it, tactics, through an Arsenal lens. So most of the points that we make and most of the things that we discuss, we're going to link them back to Arsenal somehow in keeping with the theme of the podcast. But it is a summer of, tournament football. I need to keep the content going. And so if I was going to just ignore what happened in the European Championships, well, to be honest, there won't be that much to talk about, because I do think that a lot of the transfer stuff is probably going to go a little bit quiet, at least through the duration of the group stages. So what are we going to do on today's episode? I'm going to share with you my Euro 2024 tournament predictions, and I encourage you to share yours with me in the live chat. And if you're watching or listening to this back later, get involved in the comment section and let me know how you think this one is going to go. We're going to break it down into a few sections. I'm going to talk England's chances first. We're also going to then go through a tournament predictor before talking top goal scorer, surprise package, and the player that I'm excited to watch most. So there's lots and lots to get into. Without further ado, then let's dive into it. You are listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Can England win Euro 2024? Of course they can. The talent is there. We're talking about a group that has a number of world-class players, in my opinion. You're talking Phil Foden, you're talking Jude Bellingham, you're talking Bukayo Saka, you're talking, as much as I wince when I say it, Harry Kane. This is a really, really strong England side. Declan Rice, sitting in the base of the midfield, is probably only second to Rodri in world football when it comes to playing that position today. That's how good he has been over the course of the last few seasons, and more so in the last season where he played at a higher level at Arsenal and still shone bright among everybody else. I do have a few issues, though, with this England side, and I do think that people who say they absolutely will win it are getting carried away. It's as if before every tournament, that thing that happens in the Men in Black where they zap your memory, it's as if that happens to England fans, because for years and years and years, we've heard that, Gareth Southgate isn't up to it, isn't tactically astute enough, isn't flexible, adaptable enough. Sometimes we've heard that he's not brave and bold enough. So that hasn't changed. Gareth Southgate is still Gareth Southgate. He's still got his principles. He's still got his ways. And he's still going to approach games in a similar way, I think. Then you look at some of the players that are missing, and I think that the problem for England is that a lot of them come in similar areas. And I look at that defence and I just think that is nowhere near the level an England defence should be. So I struggle to see how against the very best they're going to be able to function defensively without impacting their ability to get forward, without playing a more negative team. And that's where I wonder if they are actually good enough to do it. Now, listen, when I talk about England, I'm talking about England because I live in England. I've grown up in England, and the majority of our listenership is based here in England. It's not because I think that they have a better chance than France or Portugal or Germany, all sides that I think could win the competition this summer. But I know that the topic is hot here. We are in London, and I know that a lot of you tuning in will be here during the Euros to get a bit of England chat as well. I just look at this squad, and as I say, I think it's incredibly imbalanced. I think that at centre-back, they have an issue. I think that John Stones is world class. I should have mentioned him when I was reeling off a list of players. I think he's a fantastic footballer. But who plays alongside him? Now, had he been fit and available, and I know I'll probably get a lot of stick for this, I would have probably picked Harry Maguire. Because I don't think, for all his faults, Harry Maguire has let England down too many times. I think Harry Maguire is a big threat from set pieces, which I think England might well have to make count in this competition. And they can be a real difference maker, can't they? We've seen that at Arsenal in the very biggest and tightest of games. So I think I would have played Harry Maguire. My next option after Maguire would have been Jared Branthwaite. So I can't for the life of me figure out why Gareth Southgate, in Harry Maguire's absence, has decided to leave Branthwaite behind. It doesn't make sense to me. It looks like Mark Guehi's going to start the first game on Sunday against Serbia. I'm not sure that, he's at this level. Will he be there one day? Maybe, but I'm not sure he's there today. The alternatives, though, Ezri Konsa, who's played most of the season at right back for Aston Villa. Joe Gomez, who played a lot of minutes at fullback for Liverpool over the course of the campaign. And the other alternative is somebody like Lewis Dunk, who just for me had a really, really poor season. And I'm surprised was on the plane anyway. We might do another episode before England take to the field for their first game against Serbia on Sunday, talking about the starting 11, because I think it's a real talking point. I don't really know how Gareth Southgate finds the right balance here. But that balance issue, it spills over into the midfield as well. Because if you're talking about, for instance, and we think the most likely outcome is that Kieran Trippier plays at left back, does that impact who you play on the left-hand side? Does the fact that you've got a wobbly defense in terms of it not being your first choice defense mean that you have to be a little bit more conservative in midfield? In an ideal world, for me, it would be Rice as the 6, Bellingham as an 8, and Foden as a 10. This idea that Jude Bellingham can only play as a 10 because that's what he's done at Real Madrid is wild to me. Jude Bellingham arrived there as an 8. Jude Bellingham arrived there as an all-round midfielder and has been put into a position by Carlo Ancelotti where he's thrived. But that's a lot to do with the fact that Real Madrid don't have a centre forward and not one that Carlo Ancelotti trusts. Now that changes with Kylian Mbappe arriving at the football club, but with Vinicius and Rodrigo coming into those central areas, but always having that tendency to drift wide, that created the spaces for Jude Bellingham to step forward and get into goal scoring positions, from which he did brilliantly. But yeah, I look at this England side and I think, although there are some really talented individuals, I find it difficult to piece together how Gareth Southgate is going to strike that balance required to go to the very latter stages of this competition and potentially win it. Can they? Of course they can. The talent's there. But will they? I'm not so sure. I think that he's got a problem with Phil Foden, because for me, Phil Foden is such a good player that he should start every single game in a central attacking midfield position. But we talk about that balance, and the reason that's relevant is because I don't think that he will feel he can do that. And instead, he's probably going to shoehorn him out to the left-hand side, which means then you enter the territory of shoehorning players into areas that maybe they don't fit in, putting square pegs in round holes, etc., etc. And you're upsetting the balance of the whole team because you don't trust what you have available to you at the back. Now, I think when Luke Shaw's fit, and we think he'll be fit for the second game, England can address that imbalance at the back in terms of left-footed player at left back, etc. Maybe that helps. But for now, I think Gareth Southgate's got some really tough, difficult decisions to make. I don't want to tell you my prediction for where England are going to get to, but my overriding assessment of them right now is lots of talented players, but lack balance. And it's going to require really strong, good, decisive management for them to find anywhere near the balance that they need to go all the way in this competition. And although I think that England have a group of really good individual talents, as I keep saying, I think there are more balanced squads and groups in this competition than them. And that's why, to me, despite what the bookmakers say, England aren't the favourites. We take some of your comments on this as well. I'll say a few hellos too. A big hello to Stefan. Big hello to Matt, who'll be supporting his fellow Ukrainians. I tell you what, I like the look of Ukraine. I really, really do. We've got Tom, we've got James, we've got Hacker, we've got Dr. Peppo, who says, good evening, Harry. Good to be here live and happy anniversary for the other day. Thank you very much, mate. Appreciate it. Pete says, I don't think Southgate knows his best 11 from the players he's picked. Well, that's a problem, isn't it, going into the tournament? Hacker says he's not fit for the Premier League, let alone national manager. Look, I think they're two totally different jobs. Like, I think that Gareth Southgate does get a rough ride, but I don't think you can compare the job of being a Premier League manager to being an international manager, because as I listened to kind of Kevin Hatchard speaking really eloquently on TalkSport yesterday, and this really kind of is something that I've been saying for a long time, international management is just so different. It's not necessarily about being the best tactician. It's not necessarily about implementing a philosophy or a style, because the truth is you don't get the time to do that. I think it's more about creating an environment in which those players can come and produce as close to their best as possible. And from there, you hope that the players are going to go out there and do the business. Times with JR says, don't forget to smash that like button. It helps the channel. Loving the regular content. He says, my heart and head says France is the strongest team, both defensively and offensively. I agree with that. They feel like the most all-round side, don't they? Ali says, evening, Harry, watching from Sydney, Australia. Great show as always. Off topic, but I think Ben White missed the trick by falling out with Gareth Southgate. See, I think Ben White would have been a great option at centre-back alongside John Stones for England. And I said it at the time that it became apparent that there was no way back for Ben White, at least ahead of this competition. Maybe he's missed the trick, but you know what? As an Arsenal fan, and I said we'd be doing the whole Arsenal bias thing, like whatever. I'm happy for him to have the summer off. I'm happy for him to shake off some of the injury issues that we know he was carrying over the back end of last season, and to be ready to go for Arsenal when our pre-season begins. From a selfish point of view, I'm fine with it. But I think Ben White might one day look back on it and think, I could have gone to some of these tournaments. I could have played at this level. And it's not because I'm not good enough. It's due to other factors, which I think when you're angry and sort of frustrated, they can seem really, really important. But I think when he retires, maybe he'll look back at it and think, maybe I could have done this or I could have done that. And maybe I should have swallowed my pride and done what was right for my career. I don't know. Okay, short pause. When we come back, we're going to try and predict how the tournament is going to go using the UEFA.com bracket creator, which is I think what they've called it. Anyway, back just after this. Don't go anywhere. Okay, time to try and predict how the tournament is going to go. One thing I will say about this tournament format, and I know it means that there's jeopardy throughout the group stages, because with 3 teams going through in a lot of the groups, it means that what you don't have is those scenarios where a couple of teams win their first game and then it's completely gone. Like, it does mean there's jeopardy throughout the group stages, but it does feel like we're playing an awful lot of games to eliminate very few teams. That would be my only frustration with this. But if we head over to the UEFA website and we take a look at this, we'll go through the groups one by one. Let's start with Group A, which includes Germany, Scotland, Hungary, and Switzerland. Scotland fans, and I know that there will be some Scotland fans watching and listening to this, I'm really sorry, but I don't think I can put you any higher than 4th in this group. And the reason for that is because I just think you've got so many injury problems. I look at the Germans, they're on home turf. I think they'll be fine. I think, to me, they are one of the potential winners here. They're a side that I really, really fancy. I think the Hungarians are underrated. I think they've got a few really talented players. Dominik Szoboszlai being the standout one, given, what he's brought to Liverpool since arriving at the football club. And the Swiss are a side that I always think go under the radar in tournaments. They've got lots of experience, lots of know-how, and I'm sure that they will at least finish 3rd in this group. So I'm going to put Germany first. I'm going to put Switzerland second. I'm going to put Hungary in 3rd. And unfortunately for my Scottish friends and listeners, I'm going to put you down in 4th, which would see you eliminated from Group A. If I take it on now to Group B, this is a really, really tough group to call. Now, I look at Albania and I think, can they spring a surprise? And as much as I want to convince myself that they can, I just look at the other teams in this group and I think no. So my prediction for Group B is that Spain will top the group. I think Spain are a lot better than people seem to want to give them credit for some reason. So I'm going to put them first. And I also think Alvaro Morata is a player that could potentially score a number of goals at this competition. So when we come to talk about top goal scorer, he's a name that I would at least consider if you've got a bit of pizza money to throw on a bet. I'm going to go with Croatia in second. I still think that the squad that they've done so well in World Cups with recently is still largely intact. Okay, Luka Modric has got on a bit and isn't the Luka Modric of years gone by, but he hasn't played that much in the second half of the season for Real Madrid. Maybe that will serve him well, in this tournament. It might well be Luka Modric's last tournament, so I think he'll be giving it his absolute all. And he doesn't look like he's slowing down, does he? I'm going to go with Italy in third, and I think Italy could potentially scrape through as one of the best third-place teams. I think with Italy, we'll talk about them a little bit later on in more depth, but I think they're another side that people are looking at and going, well, no chance. They're nowhere near it. And whilst I agree they're not stacked with superstars anymore, and they've lost a lot of experienced players, your Chiellinis, your Bonucci's, etc., I still think it's a better team than people think. I think it's a team that plays in a very good, strong, stable league with a very good manager. I would argue that Luciano Spalletti is one of the best managers in this tournament. I'm going to put Albania then in fourth. Group C, I think England should win it and should win it very, very comfortably. I'm torn between the Danes and the Serbians around who's going to finish second. I think the Serbian side have a lot of attacking talent that maybe aren't as solid defensively. I think the Danish have a more well-rounded squad. But the fact that Serbia play England first and can kind of get that game out of the way and then face Denmark and Slovenia and know that it's kind of a bit of a shootout to get themselves through, I think puts them in a slightly stronger position. So I'll put Serbia second, Denmark third, and Slovenia down in fourth. If we move on to Group D, another quite difficult group to predict. I think the only thing that's obvious to me is that the French are going to win it, and they should win it. I'm then going to go with the Netherlands in second. We were talking on yesterday's episode, weren't we, about Joshua Zirkzee not being in the squad and how ridiculous that was and strange that was. And he's got a call up due to some injury. So he's had to cut his holiday short, I beg your pardon, and make his way over to Germany to join up with the squad, which is interesting. Now, in third place, I'm going to put Austria, Ralf Rangnick's Austria. And in fourth, I'm going to put Poland, who I just don't think are that great at the moment. Moving on to Group E, it's a difficult group to predict again. I think the Belgians probably will win it. I actually think Ukraine will finish second. I think Slovakia will probably finish third, and I'm going to go with Romania in fourth. And then Group F, where I fancy Portugal to win it. I fancy Turkey, actually, to get second. I think the Czechs will finish third, and I think that the Georgians, who have done brilliantly just to qualify, might well finish bottom of the pile here. And now that takes me on to predicting which of the third place teams will finish with the most points. I think that if I just quickly glance back at the groups, because you've got to take into consideration who's in those groups as well. I think that for me, the Hungarians are one of them. I think that the Italians are one of them because I expect them to beat Albania, which means that they're at least going to have 3 points on the board, which if you see draws in some of the other groups might not happen for everybody. I'm also going to pick the Austrians because I think they'll beat Poland and are capable of getting a draw against Netherlands or the French, really. And then I'm going to go with, Denmark. So that would mean that Slovakia and the Czech Republic are eliminated from the group stage for me. So do you see what I'm saying? Like about there being a lot of teams going out. So you're talking about 6 teams going out of the group stages from finishing fourth, and then another 2 that finished third. So we've played all those games and we've only actually eliminated, 8 teams. So yeah, that's my maybe bugbear with this format. Although, again, as I say, I accept that it does add a bit more jeopardy in terms of some of those group games. We're going to move on now to the knockout stages. So let's move into the round of 16, where I'll continue to bring you my predictions. Feel free to get involved in the chat box as well. If it goes the way I'm saying it's going to go, then that means it will be Spain against Hungary in the round of 16. I'd back the Spanish to come out on top in that. I'd back Germany to beat Serbia. Moving on to the next section of the draw, Portugal should beat Denmark. I'd fancy the Netherlands to beat Ukraine, but that's a tough one, That's a really, really tough one. That's not easy, but I just think that Netherlands would edge that. Belgium, Italy. I'd actually back Italy in this, I know a lot of people are going to disagree, but I think Italy, as I keep saying, are better than people are giving them credit for. So I back them to beat Belgium. Then we're moving into a game between France and Turkey, in which I think there's a clear winner. It would be the French. England would take on Austria in the round of 16 if things pan out the way I've predicted, and I'd back them to beat Ralf Rangnick's side. And I'd fancy the Croatians to beat the Swiss, which means England could face their old adversary, Croatia, in the quarterfinals. So my quarterfinals would look like this: Spain against Germany, Portugal against the Netherlands, Italy versus France, and England versus Croatia. Taking it up to the top then. Spain versus Germany. I think home advantage. The fact that Germany just feel a little bit more potent in front. I've got Spain are one of those teams. I heard someone describe them as this the other day, right? And I didn't particularly agree with it, but it did tickle me. It did make me laugh. Lots of possession, but not a side really that always make the most of that. And they're a young side as well. There's a lot of really young players in there that won't have tournament experience, that might not have experience of going deep in the Champions League even. So maybe that plays a part. Someone explained Spain to me, or described Spain to me the other day, as a team that are just a fart but no shit, if that makes sense. And it's so childish, but it made me laugh because I can kind of see where they're going with that. So I think Germany would beat them and progress to the semi-finals if they were to meet in the quarters. And I think that Portugal would edge it over the Netherlands, which means that Germany-Portugal would be my first semi-final. My second semi-final then would be Italy, one of Italy or France. I think the French are stronger, so I'd put them through. And then the winner of England versus Croatia. Now, I think England today would beat Croatia, but I wouldn't have been convinced of that in previous years. I just think that although I think that Croatia have a lot of the same players, and, Josko Gvardiol, for example, is improving at Manchester City under Pep Guardiola all the time, etc., etc. I just think that, some of those players are on a downward trajectory. Some of them have been playing in Saudi, for example, and probably aren't at the same level that they would have been in the past. So that means that my two semi-finals are Germany against Portugal and France versus England. These are the 4 teams that I think could win this competition, have a realistic chance of winning this competition. And when I do my full predictions, I end up bringing them together. Let me just zoom out on that a little bit so you guys can see it clearly. Which means my final has to be made up of 2 of these 4 teams. And I will go Germany and I will go France. I fancy England to get knocked out in the semi-finals. If they get past Croatia, I don't think they'd get past France. And therefore, it's a Germany-France final. And although France are favourites and people will look at them and say, well, they've got to win it from that position, I'd actually back the Germans on home soil. Germany are my pick to win this tournament. I could be completely wrong, but I've just got a feeling about the Germans. Therefore, they are my winners of Euro 2024. Let me know your thoughts on that in the live chat box as well. A couple of other bits to touch on. We're going to talk top goal scorer surprise package, player I'm watching really, really closely. I've already given you my winner, and we'll do that right after this. Okay, let's begin with top goal scorer. Right? Now, if I was making a prediction, not going with any gut feeling, not going with what I want to happen, just purely based on, head over everything else, I'm going to go Kylian Mbappe. If I've tipped France to go all the way through to the final, then why wouldn't I pick Kylian Mbappe? I think they're in a group, France, that they should win. I think it's a group that he could, build up goals in. He might, there's suggestions that he's not even 100% fit for the first game. I've read that rumor a little bit, but Kylian Mbappe is so bloody good. This is a guy that scored a hat-trick in the World Cup final. He's so bloody good that I wouldn't even bet against him if that were the case. So Kylian Mbappe is my head pick. But do you know what my heart pick is? Again, I've put them in the final. So Germany, I'm going to pick Germany's Kai Havertz. He is 33-1 in the betting to be the top goal scorer at this tournament. Now, I'm not saying he's going to do it, but when I think about the way he ended the season with Arsenal and the fact that he's probably going to start at centre forward for a German side I fancy to go a long way in this competition, 33-1 to me sounds bonkers and is at least worth a tenner. So I'm going to chuck a tenner on Kai Havertz to be the tournament's top goal scorer. Surprise package. I'm going to say Italy, and that's why I kept saying I was going to talk about them a little bit later on, because as I mentioned, they're a side that is made up of very good players, if not a side full of superstars. But I also think the fact they play in a good league, the fact that they all know each other very well. Okay, the styles changed under Luciano Spalletti, and that's going to take time for him to implement. But they're all very intelligent players. It's always something we associate with Italian football: flexibility, tactical nous, being streetwise, etc., etc. They've got all of that, and they've got probably one of the best managers in the tournament. So I think Italy are going to make it to the quarterfinals. I think there are a lot of people out there reading some of the previews and watching some of the previews that don't even think they'll get out of the group. But I think they'll make, at the very least, the quarterfinals. So Italy are a surprise package for me. And I also think the Swiss as well. I think I've put them in my predictor to lose to Croatia in the round of 16. But that's not really based on much. Like, I would fancy them to get a result against Croatia too. Like, what I'm trying to say is, if I had to lean one way, I'd pick Croatia, but not by much. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that if Switzerland get to the round of 16 and meet Croatia, that they couldn't progress to the quarterfinals and potentially meet England. Switzerland, experience, lots of know-how, lots of nous, and I think will surprise people with how far they might go. And to finish up, I'm going to share with you guys the player that I'm looking forward to watching really, really closely. And that player is a Dutch player, and he goes by the name of Xavi Simons. We've been linked with him a lot in the past. I don't think we'll get him, by the way. I think that obviously the fact that he's owned by PSG probably makes that quite difficult. He's had a difficult time at international levels, not played a great deal of games, Xavi Simons, but took a bit of time to kind of get over the hurdle of scoring the first goal. There were lots of people saying, well, Xavi Simons at RB Leipzig is great, but Xavi Simons, when he pulls on that orange shirt, is just not the same player. I think this is a real opportunity for him to play in a kind of advanced midfield area, float in and around the forward, whoever that might be. Is probably going to be Wout Weghorst, I would guess. And I think that he is somebody who has a real opportunity to make a bit of a statement and a bit of a mark. And I'm expecting him to step up. Other players I've heard talked about are Arda Güler for Turkey. Obviously did really well in the second half of the season for Real Madrid. And, when I think about the other names that came to my mind, they were all players that you're expecting to have a good tournament anyway. Xavi Simons has done great in Germany, but I think he kind of needs that moment on the European stage that makes the rest of the continent sit up and go, hold on a minute. I think this guy really is a top player. So I'm backing him to have a good tournament, and we'll see how he gets on. I guess the final question to answer is it coming home? Well, based on my predictions, no, it's not. And I hope that I never have to hear that song ever again. It drives me mad every time a tournament comes around. My friends know how much it winds me up, and they sing it on purpose to annoy me and irritate me. I wouldn't mind England winning it. They've got a great crop of players. There are some Arsenal connections in the side, which hasn't always been the case in recent years. But take the buzz of the UK out of it for a minute. And obviously I want them to stay in the tournament as far as they can, because the buzz will die a little bit here in the UK if they're out. But if I was a betting man, would I bet on England to win it? No, I wouldn't, because I think there are probably 3 other squads that look more balanced, might not have the high level of individuals that England do, But I think the German squad is probably more balanced. I think the Portuguese squad is probably more balanced. And I'd say the same with the French. So in my head, England are probably the fourth favourites. And I know the betting doesn't reflect that, but that's how I see it in my mind. And we'll have to see how they get on. Thank you for joining me on this special edition of the Chronicles of Aguna Euro 2024 Predictor. We'll be back tomorrow to bringing you Arsenal news, but obviously looking at what's going on in the Euros as well. So bear with me over the tournament. There will be Arsenal content, but we're going to mix the shows up. Bit of Arsenal, bit of Euro 2024 to keep us ticking over. And I'd love if you could all participate in the comments with your thoughts, your predictions. What do you think of my predictions? Are they completely bonkers? Let me know in the live chat, and I'll see you all on the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have a great Thursday. Goodbye.